you're a beginner guitar player, you want to play some jazz songs, you crack open the real book, and you panic. So your question is, can I play the real book with the chords I already know? And the answer is yes. Yes, you can. You want to play songs from the real book, but you freak out when you see all those weird chords. Let's fix that right now. Joe Pass famously said, "When it comes to chords, I don't like to get too complicated." And I'm with Joe. There are only 3 chord families: major, minor, and dominant. All those fancy chords that are scaring you in the real book are all members of one of those 3 families. As we have discussed, there are 3 chord families: major, minor, and dominant. The major family includes the major chord, the 6th chord, the 6-add-9 chord, the add-9 chord, the major 7 chord, and the major 9 chord. All of these chords are built from a 1-3-5 triad, plus some extra notes. Here's the secret sauce. You can substitute any member of the major chord family, perhaps one that you already know, for a fancier one on the song chart, and it would be perfectly fine. For example, in Crazy He Calls Me, the chart says F major 9 and then B flat 9 sharp 11. Here's an F major 9. Here's a B flat 9. However, if I don't know those chords, I can just play a plain F and a plain B flat 7. For a plain F, plain B flat 7. Just one example of a way that you can use basic chords as substitutes for their fancier cousins while you're learning your fancier chords. As we have discussed, there are 3 chord families: major, minor, and dominant. Let's look at the minor chord family. That includes the minor chord, the minor 6, the minor 7, the minor 9, the minor 11, and the minor major 7. All of these chords are built from a 1-flat-3-5 triad, plus some extra notes. Remember the secret sauce. You can substitute any member of the minor chord family, one that you already know. You probably already know the minor and the minor 7. You can substitute any member of the minor chord family that you already know for a fancier one on the song chart, and it will be perfectly fine. For example, in Crazy He Calls Me, the chart says D minor 9 and G7 flat 9. D minor 9 and G7 flat 9. Okay? But I can just play a plain D minor and a plain G7. Plain D minor and plain G7 like this. So that's an example of how you can use some basic chords you already know to substitute for more complicated chords that I hope you are learning. As we discussed before, there are 3 chord families: the major chord family, minor chord family, dominant chord family. Let's have a look at the dominant chord family. The dominant chord family includes the dominant 7 or 7 chord, the 9, the 11, the 13. Okay? In addition, it also includes what we call alter chords. So a 7 flat 5, a 7 sharp 5, a 7 flat 9, a 7 sharp 9, and then there are a few more, flat 5, flat 9, sharp 5, flat 9, and so on, altered variations. They're all, we call them generically just the numbered chords or the extended chords. All of these chords are built from a tetrad, from a 1-3-5 and flat 7. That's the foundation of them all. Plus, we add in extra notes depending on the name of the chord. When we're playing, we use the same secret sauce. In other words, you can substitute any simpler 7 chord for any of the fancier named chords. For example, in Crazy He Calls Me, the chord chart shows a G minor 7 to a C13 flat 9. Okay, here's G minor 7. Here's a C13 flat 9. If I don't know those, I can just play a plain G minor and a plain C7. Totally acceptable substitution. As we've discussed before, there are only 3 chord families: major, minor, and dominant chords. What about diminished chords? You see all these diminished chords? I'll show you the symbol on the screen of the names of some of them. You get the diminished 7, the minor 7, flat 5. What about all these weird chords? A diminished chord is made up of 1, flat 3, flat 5. And the spacing between the 1 and the flat 5 is exactly 6 semitones, or a tritone. And that makes it sound like this. A dominant chord is made up of 1, 3, 5, and flat 7. However, in dominant chords, the spacing between the 3 and the flat 7 is also exactly 6 semitones, just exactly the same spacing as between the 1 and the flat 5 in a diminished chord. And that makes a dominant chord sound like this. Dominant chord, 4 semitones lower, sounds like this. Okay, both chords have a tritone in them, and they sound like they both have a similar ingredient. They sound very similar. Because of the similar sound, if we don't know how to play a diminished chord, we can just play a dominant chord, but one that is 2 whole tones or 4 semitones below the shown root of the diminished chord. Okay, so if in in Crazy He Calls Me, we see a B flat diminished 7, which is this chord here. I can play a G flat 7 instead, which is this chord here. And you can hear how it sounds very, very similar. Okay, so once again, you can substitute an ordinary dominant 7 chord that is 4 semitones below the diminished chord that's shown on your chart. It will sound perfectly fine. It's a perfectly useful substitution. So to go back to Crazy He Calls Me, the chart shows us a C9 with a sharp 11. I'll just play an ordinary C9 though. So here's a C9, and then a B flat diminished 7. Okay, but I can just play plain C7 for that first chord, and then a plain G flat 7 here. And it's a perfectly acceptable substitution. So today we looked at the 3 chord families, how to substitute a simple major chord instead of a fancier one, how to substitute a simple minor chord instead of a fancy minor chord, how to substitute a simple dominant chord instead of one of the fancier higher numbered chords, and how to substitute a simple dominant chord instead of a diminished chord. Of course, it's really helpful to expand your chord vocabulary to include at least the most common jazz chords. While you're learning, you now have the tools to play any song in the real book just using the chords you already know today. And that's very cool. As you go along, learn a little here and there, learn the chords one at a time, and play these songs, you will learn how to play jazz. To learn more about chords and guitar, click on one of the videos that's coming up on the screen right now, and don't forget to subscribe.